The following WCIA weather special is brought to you by Bryant Industries and Clay Dooley Tire and Auto. This is WCIA3's 2023 Winter Weather Outlook.
Hello and welcome to the Winter Weather Outlook. I'm Chief Meteorologist Kevin Leidy, along with meteorologists Jacob Dickey, Adam Sherwinski, and Seth Bonoff. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll bring you stories of how to prepare for the upcoming winter weather season.
Whether it's traveling by bus, train, or plane, we look at how weather impacts your travel.
Also, first responders are not immune to dodging the bad weather, how they deal with the worst of conditions.
And a look back at the 10-year anniversary of a major tornado outbreak in central Illinois.
And of course, I've got your winter weather forecast. But first, when weather happens, it can lead to icy roads and poor driving conditions. Our meteorologist Jacob Dickey talked to one woman who survived a scary situation on the interstate during a winter storm.
This particular day, I was driving. I had just gotten on the interstate at Mahomet, and the interstate was just glossy. And I was going super slow because I knew that it was a bad situation. And as I was looking forward, I could see emergency lights on the side of the road ahead. And I thought, well, I'm going to signal and move over, get them more clearance. But as I started to signal to get to the far lane, a huge, beautiful, big black truck just zoomed past me. So I waited for them to go past me, then I got in the other lane, but right then they saw the emergency vehicles. They stamped on their brakes. They went sideways in front of me. So I'm looking at their passenger door right in front of me, so I had to brake. And then when I put my brakes on, I went into a slide. And they pulled out of their slide, kept going, no drama. But I got to slide into the state police officer's car. I tried to pull a little bit ahead of the cars that were already in the ditch. So I pulled a little bit in front of them with my flashers on, and I just waited because I knew they were already at the scene and I didn't know if there was injuries. And as I'm sitting there, two semi-trucks collided right next to me. So I was afraid they were gonna push me down in the ditch, which they didn't. And the officer was just going car by car by car. And he came and just said, "Are you okay?" Yes. He said, "Can I take care of other people and come back to you?" Yes. So he went and talked to the semi-drivers and everyone. I knew it was bad, but the conditions on the interstate were far different than the conditions on the north-south Route 47. If I had known, I would have taken an alternate route. But I tell people to think about your vehicle. Like, how reliable is your vehicle? How good are your tires? How much experience do you have driving in the snow or the ice? How far do you have to go? What are the roads like, between where you're at and where you need to be? But you need to make your own choice. Snow, you can see it. You can get an idea, oh, there's tire treads in front of me. You can see how deep it is. Ice, you can't have any gauge of when is it going to ease up, when is it going to be crunchy, when is it going to be smooth, and it's more unpredictable.
It's an extremely common sight. Every year, snowplows clearing the roadways. IDOT does quite a bit of work to remove the snow, but local companies have an important role as well.
Traveling on the road in wintertime is always tricky thanks to occasional winter weather events. Luckily, there are always well-coordinated teams out there working to make sure travel is as safe as possible. David Spiker, the IDOT District 5 operations engineer, helps coordinate one of those teams each year.
Right now we're in that big process of before the winter as a whole. The process that we go through is really to do a very thorough inspection of all of our trucks in Champaign. We have roughly 25 different vehicles, from a tandem truck all the way down to pickup truck.
The Champaign County team consists of about 60 people, and it's their task to clear off roads, starting with the busiest ones.
Generally, high priority routes are going to be the interstates, routes like University here in Champaign. That being said, really all of our routes, whether it's a relatively small amount of traffic or a higher amount of traffic, is going to have a truck on it regularly.
Although IDOT has a plan, the weather ultimately dictates how it's executed.
Weather plays a big role in what we do. Why is IDOT not salting? That's a real common question, and that has to do with humidity, dew points, temperatures, the way things are fluctuating, and wind speed.
Local businesses that offer snow removal are also crucial to the cleanup effort. Anthony White, the account manager at Merrill Landscaping Services, says that they have a number of businesses and residents relying on them.
It doesn't matter if it's -40 out. If that business is open, it's got to be open. All night we'll service our commercial properties. If it's still snowing in the morning, they'll be there to get everything opened up. Once the snow is done, will go to the residential customers that don't request an early morning service. We have 7 trucks and 2 skids and 2 inloaders that we use every snow event. And then every truck is salting. You know, some years we'll only plow 7 times, but we'll go salt 30 times.
Despite some lower snowfall totals here of late, Anthony says it won't impact business thanks to adaptive but fair strategies.
I think it's going to drive the people in the industry doing the actual work to try to set up what we call annual contracts. If we plow 20 times that year, you're going to pay X amount. If we plow twice, you pay X amount.
Whether big and statewide or smaller and local, Central Illinois is in good hands this winter.
While you may not always associate winter time with tornadoes, it does happen. As a matter of fact, we're days away from one major anniversary. November 17th marks the 10-year anniversary of one of the most memorable tornado outbreaks in Central Illinois history. Now, this rare November outbreak produced 75 tornadoes across 7 states. You might recall, this was around midday on a Sunday in the middle of our Chicago Bears game that was on WCIA. Now, here locally, we had several tornadoes. Now, one of the strongest on this day was an EF4. Now, that was 190-mile-an-hour winds, and it devastated the Washington, Illinois area, killing 3 people and injuring 125. Now, we also had about a dozen tornadoes here in Central Illinois. 2 tornadoes reached EF3 strength. One was north of Tuscola, 2 near Villa Grove. Then there was another one that tracked right through the city of Gifford. Now, that tornado had winds of 140 miles an hour on the ground for 30 miles and destroyed 30 homes. One of those homes belonged to the Panbacker family, who was not at home at the time, but when they eventually did come home, things looked very different.
They said that the town of Gifford had been hit. So then I came to town. I first went to my parents' house, who lives on the south end of town, and then I went to ours, which was in the middle of town, and discovered that it was gone. We had a foundation left, I guess. That was about it.
Had they been home, given the amount of debris, they might not have made it.
We had a small house. All we had was a crawl space. Most of our house was up against the neighbor's house and in their front yard. I can't imagine, because we had no basement or anything like that, and there was, I'm going to say, no real recognizable part of our house.
I mean, we had nothing left. It was just a hole in the ground. We found a few things, but eventually it had to be thrown away anyway because it was covered, and insulation just wasn't salvageable. Wedding photos, everything. Yeah. Everything was gone.
For the Panbacker family, while they lost everything, they know what's most important.
Things can be replaced. People can't. Loved ones can't. And so we realized that after going through that, you know, things are things.
More of the Winter Weather Outlook is coming up. But first, can you answer this winter weather quiz? We'll have the answer and more from our Winter Weather Outlook after the break. Whether it's for a trip to another part of Illinois or freight coming in from across the country, railroads are an important source of transportation. Meteorologist Adam Sherwinski tells us how trains power through the winter.
And of course, as we get out of the summer and out of the fall and into the winter, we know we're using the heating systems on our trains more than we're using the air conditioning systems. So we make sure those are serviced and ready to go.
That's not the only way they take on winter. Before snow and ice become a problem, Amtrak gets their staff ready to tackle winter at its worst.
Most all of our rail cars have a broom and a shovel for clearing snow and ice out of the switches and out of the way and out of the steps. And there are things the railroads do to keep tracks open and to keep switches, which is a movable part of the rail, which enables a train to go from one set of tracks to another, to keep those operating. And in central Illinois, we count on Union Pacific and CN to do that for us and for their own traffic too.
According to the Association of American Railroads 2023 Winter Weather Fact Sheet, plows in front of trains, bulldozers on the track, rotary snow blowers, and spreader cars can help clear tracks of snow. They also say that keeping equipment dry and warm using heaters helps prevent pieces of the train or switches on the track from freezing.
Ice storms are a big problem for everybody who's trying to move around. And because ice storms often are involved in massive power outages or even smaller power outages that affect whether the grade crossing signals are having power for them or not, that in my mind, and I'm not an operating person, I just try to explain it, worries me.
Winter is a very busy time of year for traveling, but also a tricky one. Willard Airport does everything they can to make sure your flight is good to go, regardless of the weather.
Whether it's to vacation away from the cold or visit family across the country, residents of Central Illinois rely on traveling by air, even during the winter. Tim Bannon, the executive director at Willard Airport in Champaign, admits that it takes a team effort this time of year.
The work that goes into keeping the airport open is obviously a lot more during the winter time. We have 6 full-time people here in our maintenance department who helps keep our airport safe.
Even with the crew ready to go at all times, there's only so much that can be done to prepare before a winter weather event.
There is pre-treatment that we can do on the runways. Other than that, it's mostly reactionary. We have a lot of equipment out here at the airport that helps remove snow and ice off the runways.
2 essential pieces of equipment are the plow and broom you see here. This 20-foot-long plow comes in handy when a more wet, slushy snow accumulates as it gets underneath the snow and scrapes down to the surface. The 18-foot-long broom is best utilized for when there is a dry snow on the ground, as this massive tool rotates its bristles at great speeds to eliminate all the snow down to the top of the pavement. The newest vehicle to the lineup, one of the 2 brooms, costs several hundred thousands of dollars, but is worth every penny considering how much pavement there is to be cleared.
Priority 1 surfaces, meaning our main commercial apron, the main runway, and the taxiway that connects it all. It's about 2.3 million square feet, so the equivalent of that is about 18 miles of 2-lane highway. We have to clean 1 inch of snow within 30 minutes time.
When temperatures drop below freezing, a plane may need de-iced, a process that American Airlines takes care of.
They de-ice the wings, the tail, the vertical stabilizer, and the fuselage. That's important because ice buildup on the wings changes the shape of the wing, and it can reduce the amount of lift that the aircraft wings generate. Over 200 planes a year are de-iced here, and we go through about 20 to 25,000 gallons of de-icing fluid.
All of these steps are taken in an effort to ensure that every flight is able to take off and land safely.
More of the winter weather outlook is coming up. But first, can you answer this winter weather quiz? We'll have the answer and more from our winter weather outlook after the break.
WCIA3's 2023 Winter Weather Outlook continues now.
The Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District provides transportation for students and commuters daily. But what about when winter weather strikes? Meteorologist Adam Sherwinski finds out how they operate when conditions go downhill.
Before the first flakes fall, the Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District is getting ready for winter in central Illinois.
We pull out our winter weather standard operating procedures and we redistribute that every year to the staff that oversee the different functions of the SOP.
This year, to assist in the training, there is a brand new driving simulator. It can recreate poor traction found on icy and snow-covered roads. This allows drivers to practice in those nasty conditions without having to wait for weather to turn sour.
For our operators they're the ones out in the mix, you know, they're called the front line for a reason, and so we try to offer them as many resources as possible.
Once the weather forecast does call for snow, ice, or cold temperatures, communication is key.
We want to communicate with our operators before the event occurs, and we generally have a heads up that an event is going to be occurring. So we communicate to the operators what the expected conditions will be and what our expectations and what the community's expectations are for the provision of service.
Once conditions deteriorate, communication is critical between employees in the control room, drivers on the road, and passengers traveling across town.
So we start scaling back service as slow as possible so that we can get people back home. But you have to communicate through all of that so that our employees and our customers know what's going on.
To keep routes running safely and as efficiently as possible, MTD works with partners like the University of Illinois, the municipalities they operate in, and local emergency services. Warming buses will be used to help keep the public safe during dangerous temperatures. Crews will be sent out to help stuck buses and scout out to see if it's safe to travel on certain roads. On a normal day, the control room is busy making sure bus traffic flows as normal. But when winter weather hits, it's all hands on deck.
Make a game plan with the whole district of who needs to be where, who's responsible for what. We will also set up areas for sleeping.
The control room has access to GPS data from buses and cameras. They can also see what's going on at the larger bus stops. However, one of their best tools during winter storms isn't visual. It's the ability to talk to the entire team.
Every day is a little different. I mean, it does get tense in here, but the biggest key thing is, you know, having people on the same page.
While most of us stay inside during bad weather, first responders sometimes don't have a choice. Our meteorologist Jacob Dickey stopped by the Hoopeston Fire Department to hear about how they fought 2 house fires last year when it felt like 40 below zero.
It was very, very cold. I actually got clothes laid out that night because I was afraid that we would get called out, and I wanted to be prepared and stay warm.
That night was a pretty good challenge. Within 7 minutes of the first call coming in, as we arrived on the first call, the second call came in. We had to split our crews.
I can't believe that we had 2 structure fires 8 minutes apart. The wind was so strong because it was blowing 40, 50 mile an hour that night too. Had a hard time with the water getting up to the second story. It was really difficult to get it put out.
Then we had to start calling in mutual aid right away because we knew that we weren't going to be able to keep up with everything that was going on. We had to cease operations about 3, 4 in the morning. The truck started freezing up. We had one that froze completely up and had to be towed back to the station. All of our hoses were froze solid, so we had to let what we couldn't get put out burn for a little longer, let everything warm back up inside the station, then we could go back out about noon and put the rest of it out.
I thought, oh no, I can't believe this is happening. It's too cold for this, you know. I actually was driving to the first call when the second call came in, and it was about 3 blocks from my house, so I went straight to it. I was the first one on scene.
When your nose hairs freeze up, you know it's cold.
You always have to be aware of what the situation is outside, wind direction, how cold it is, what you need properly to wear underneath your gear, plus your gear, what the trucks are going to get when they get there, what we need to do to the trucks, hoses, everything to keep them from freezing while we're fighting the fire. Just basically keep everybody safe and keep an eye on them to make sure they don't get too cold, keep them warmed up in the truck.
More of the Winter Weather Outlook is coming up. But first, can you answer this winter weather quiz? We'll have the answer and more from our winter weather outlook after the break. And welcome back. It's time for Kevin's winter weather forecast. Let's get right into it. I look at a lot of things. For one, how about the Old Farmer's Almanac? They've got a great book there, puts out some really interesting forecasts like cold and snowy for the entire Midwest, or the Farmer's Almanac. There's another one there. They've got cold and stormy for us. They've got their own formula and way of doing things, but we also looked at things like NOAA. They put out a temperature outlook each year, and they say above normal for central Illinois, which is where that purple dot is located. In terms of precipitation, near normal to maybe getting close to that below normal, which is up across some of the Great Lakes. Also, El Nino, La Nina is a key thing that we use to determine just what the winter is going to be like. El Nino would mean that the sea temperatures right there at the equator are above normal, or the opposite, below under a La Nina pattern. Well, this year, that red, way above normal, several degrees above normal. So we actually would then put that into different categories of an El Nino. In this case, we're already up into the moderate, heading towards a strong El Nino pattern. And it is a slam dunk with the forecast. Those red bars there saying 100% chance that that is going to be the pattern that we are in. And that actually helps us forecast what the winter may be like. And we can go back and look at all the numbers. We crunch the numbers, you try to find a similar year that is going to be close to the conditions that we're experiencing right now. And we can look at those in strong and very strong El Ninos. We circle a few of them and we say, let's look at some of the data. And that data from very strong and strong El Ninos shows this in terms of snowfall, you can see, and that is running below average. But that's not the only thing I look at. Siberian snowpack, what's going up here in Russia, Siberia? That is actually something that I really use as a tool. Right now, they've got a below normal snowpack. There's not a lot of snow there. There's not a lot of white on the ground. So why is that something? Think about this. When there is that snowpack and there's a lot of white there, the sun would be coming down and that radiation is getting reflected back up. It's called a high albedo, okay? And so when you've got a lot of snowpack, that means it's gonna be cold. But there's not a snowpack up in Siberia this year. So it's going to be maybe a little bit warmer for us, right? Not as much cold air bottled up to the north. Sunspot activity as well. We look at that and we are definitely on the rise in solar activity, which often means a warmer winter under higher activity. All right, let's look at the forecast. I'm going with above normal with the temperatures. I'm going with above normal in terms of rainfall. And when it comes to snowfall, Well, it's going below normal too. On average, we should be at 23 inches of the white stuff. I don't think we're going to be close to it. We're giving only 13 to 17 inches for snowfall this year. And a white Christmas, that could be rough. I think only about a 15% chance of that. But it's not a 0% chance. We'll always wait and see. Let's go ahead and take a look at the recap. Key takeaways: another warmer winter. Snowfall is going to be well below normal. A few cold blasts of air, so don't think we're going to completely escape winter. Watch out for those winter severe storms. The white Christmas chance, probably not too likely. And unfortunately, for the winter snow lovers, this may not be the winter for you. That wraps up our show for tonight. Thanks so much for joining us.
As always, you can find out more about all of these stories online at WCIA.com.
Don't forget to follow us on our social media pages as well.
And don't forget to download the WCIA3 weather app.
All right, again, thanks for watching tonight. Stay weather aware, keep an eye to the sky. Have a good night.
This has been WCIA3's 2023 Winter Weather Outlook, brought to you by Bryant Industries and Clay Dooley Tire and Auto.